Why, my love? Why did you send me to this desolate place?" Ilara's whisper was lost in the icy wind that whipped through the ruins of Valyria Castle. Her aged fingers trembled as she clutched her old cloak, her clouded eyes scanning the moss-covered walls that seemed to swallow her last hope. Abandoned, vulnerable, and with a shattered heart, she had no choice but to obey her husband's last, enigmatic will. But as the sun set, painting the landscape a sinister red, and shadows danced like ghosts, a distant echo from the depths of the fortress made her heart leap, and what she was about to discover would change everything she thought she knew about her beloved's death. The echo was not a sound of anguish, but something more, an almost musical lament that seemed to dance on the air currents, calling to her. Ilara held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Was it her imagination, weary and overwhelmed by grief? Or was it the castle, the ancient stone itself, speaking? She clutched her cloak tighter, feeling the cold penetrate her bones, but a new flame, faint and fragile, ignited within her. Curiosity, long dormant beneath the weight of sorrow, began to stir. "My dear Alaric," she murmured, her voice hoarse, "what have you hidden here?" With hesitant steps, Ilara began to move, no longer seeking refuge from the cold, but driven by an urgent need to unravel that mystery. With each step, the echo seemed to grow stronger, guiding her through dark corridors and empty halls, where centuries of dust lay like a veil over forgotten glory. The walls, once imposing, now crumbled in places, revealing the bare stone and the green moss that embraced them. The air was heavy, smelling of damp earth and mold, and shadows danced more intensely as the dim twilight faded. She leaned on the walking sticks Alaric had carved for her, each support and effort, but her determination was a fire that warmed her soul. Ilara had never been a woman of great adventures, her life woven into the simplicity and love of her humble home. But Alaric, always an enigma, even in life, seemed to have prepared her for something greater, something she had never imagined. The loyalty she felt for him was an unbreakable golden thread, and she knew she could not rest until she fulfilled his last and strangest will. The echo led her to a wing of the castle that seemed less ravaged by time, a narrower corridor with fewer ruins. There, the dampness gave way to slightly drier air, and the darkness was punctuated by slivers of light that filtered through small openings in the ceiling, revealing faded tapestries that still adorned the walls. They depicted hunting scenes, forgotten crests, and noble figures, their silk and gold threads now worn and dusty. Ilara stopped before one of these tapestries, one depicting a winged dragon, its once vibrant colors now almost indistinguishable. Something about it called to her. It wasn't the echo, which now seemed to have fallen silent, but a feeling, a premonition. Her wrinkled, slender fingers glided over the rough fabric, feeling the texture of the broken threads. There was something different there, an irregularity that didn't belong to the design. With an effort, she pulled at the edge of the tapestry, and a faint creak was heard. Behind it, there was no stone wall, but a dark, narrow, almost imperceptible opening. A secret chamber. Her heart raced again, but this time not from fear, but from a contained excitement, a hope she didn't know she still possessed. Alaric. He was there, somehow. Her eyes, once clouded with tears, now shone with a new light, a spark of purpose. She took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs, and with her walking stick held forward, took the first step into the darkness, towards whatever her beloved had left for her. The journey had only just begun, but Ilara already felt she was no longer alone. Ilara pushed aside the tapestry with her walking stick, stepping into the darkness of the secret chamber. A scent of old paper and wax, unlike the castle's mold, filled the air. Her eyes, accustomed to the gloom, discerned a small, circular space, where a narrow window filtered the last ray of sunlight, gilding the suspended dust. The walls were of smooth stone, without the sticky dampness of the exterior. In the center, a stone pedestal supported a dark wooden chest, carved with ancient symbols. Beside it, a rustic chair and a dust-covered table. Ilara's heart beat with renewed vigor. Alaric. He had left something. With a trembling sigh, she approached the table, her steps echoing in the reverent silence. On the table lay an ancient parchment, yellowed by time, and a leather-bound diary with worn edges and a verdigris bronze clasp. Ilara reached out, her wrinkled fingers trembling as she touched the cold, aged leather of the diary. It was as if, through that object, she touched Alaric's very soul, feeling his presence there, in that hidden refuge he had prepared. A solitary tear traced a path down her time-worn face, but this time it was not of pure sorrow, but a bittersweet mix of grief and a nascent, powerful hope. She sat down and carefully opened the diary. The inner pages revealed elegant, slightly faded handwriting. The first line read, "To my beloved Ilara, the guardian of what once was and what still can be." Her name there, in Alaric's unmistakable hand. Ilara brought a hand to her mouth, a sob caught in her throat. He knew she would come. He knew her so well. Turning the pages, she began to read excerpts. Alaric's words spoke of a forgotten lineage, of a grand kingdom called Valyria, and of a duty that he, as the last heir, felt compelled to protect. It mentioned a legendary artifact and the restoration of a lost glory. Ilara's mind reeled, her husband a king, the castle the seat of his power. With each word, Alaric's image transformed. He was not just her husband, he was a man of deep secrets, of monumental responsibility. Ilara's vulnerability and abandonment gave way to admiration and a newfound purpose. She was not there on a whim. She was there to continue his legacy. With hands firm with new conviction, Ilara picked up the parchment. Rolled and sealed, it revealed, when unrolled, an intricate map. It showed the castle, the surrounding lands, and mysterious symbols. Marked points, winding paths, and in the center the familiar emblem, the winged dragon from the tapestry that had guided her there. She looked at the diary, at the map, and at the window where the last light of day was fading. The cold of the castle was still real, but the emptiness in her heart began to be filled. Alaric had not abandoned her. He had entrusted her with the greatest mission of her life. Ilara, the fragile widow, felt a strength she never knew she possessed, the guardian of an ancestral legacy. The journey had only just begun, but Ilara felt she was no longer alone, and now she knew why. Ilara remained seated in the rustic chair, the diary and parchment in her wrinkled hands. The last ray of sunlight faded, plunging the secret chamber into gloom. Fear had dissipated, replaced by a torrent of overwhelming emotions. Alaric, her Alaric, not a simple man, but the guardian of a millennial secret, the final link in a royal lineage. The words "forgotten kingdom," "legendary artifact," and "lost glory" echoed in her mind like ancient bells, awakening something dormant. She closed her eyes, a warm tear tracing a path, not of pain, but of a deep and overwhelming understanding. Her husband's image reconfigured in her memory. He, with his enigmatic smile, eyes that held unspoken thoughts. How many times had she wondered about his silences, the melancholy that sometimes shadowed his gaze? Now everything made sense. He was not absent. He carried the weight of a legacy, the hope of a people. And to her, Ilara, the widow who saw herself as so small, he had entrusted the continuation of this dream. A knot tightened in her throat, a mix of sadness and pride. The pain of loss was still there, an invisible thread that bound her to him, but now intertwined with a purpose that transcended her existence. She opened her eyes and looked at the diary, her fingers tracing the words that revealed the story. The castle, once a prison of solitude and cold, transformed into a sanctuary, a bastion of memory and promise. Every stone, corridor, echo now seemed to tell part of Alaric's story, whispering ancestral secrets. The mission was monumental, yes. She was an elderly, weary woman, and the world outside was vast and unknown. But her loyalty to Alaric, her anchor, now became the sail that would propel her boat through uncharted seas. With a sigh that carried the weight of a lifetime and the lightness of a new beginning, Ilara stood up. Her knees still ached, but physical weakness was eclipsed by an inner strength that radiated from her chest, warming her. She held the diary and the parchment like the most precious treasures in the world. The darkness outside no longer frightened her. The castle was no longer a tomb. It was a cradle, a starting point for a new life. She needed light, time to study, to understand every detail of the map, every clue left by Alaric. Ilara's mind was already beginning to weave plans. Where to begin? How to decipher the ancient symbols? Who could help her? Solitude was still a challenge, but now she had Alaric's voice, guiding her with surprising clarity. She felt connected to something greater, to a timeless current. The promise of restoring Valyria was not just a task. It was a chance to honor the love of her life, to give meaning to his departure. Her eyes shone with a long, unfelt determination, a flame that grief had tried to extinguish, but now burned brighter than ever. With firm steps, despite her age, Ilara walked to the small window, observing the stars dotting the night sky. The night's cold still penetrated the castle, but she felt a different warmth coming from within, a sense of renewal. Her former vulnerability was being replaced by an unexpected resilience, a new purpose. She was Ilara, the widow, yes, but also the guardian and heir of a hope. The journey would be long and arduous, full of challenges, but she was not alone. Alaric was with her. In every word of the diary, in every line of the map, in every beat of her renewed heart. Her adventure had just begun. Ilara remained seated, the diary and map still clutched in her wrinkled hands. The last vestige of daylight had vanished, plunging the secret chamber into deep darkness, broken only by the faint glimmer of stars peeking through the narrow window. However, the cold that had been her constant companion seemed to recede, replaced by a warmth that bloomed in her chest, a fire ignited by Alaric's words. Her mind reeled, trying to comprehend the enormity of what she had just discovered. Her husband, her gentle Alaric, a king, the last descendant of a forgotten kingdom. Valyria? It was a story too grand for her simple life, yet the evidence weighed in her hands. A tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of awe. She closed her eyes, imagining Alaric's face, his gentle smile, the depth in his eyes that she had always found so captivating, so mysterious. Now, the mystery was unveiled. He had not merely been a man, he had been a guardian of secrets, a silent protector of a magnificent legacy. The melancholic silences, the distant gaze she sometimes perceived in him, they were not signs of absence, but of the immense burden he carried. A profound sense of understanding washed over her, mixed with a bittersweet ache for the man she thought she knew, and the man he truly was. A single tear escaped, tracing a path down her wrinkled face, a testament to her enduring grief and a nascent, fierce pride. The weight of the task before her overwhelmed her, a mountain rising from the plains of her previous despair. Restore a kingdom? Find a legendary artifact? She, Ilara, an elderly widow whose greatest adventure had been a trip to the market. A faint, self-deprecating smile touched her lips. Yet the thought did not crush her, it invigorated her. Alaric had not asked for an army or a young hero. He had chosen her. He believed in her. This unwavering faith, even beyond the grave, was the most potent fuel for her weary spirit. Her loyalty, once a passive devotion, now transformed into an active and ardent resolution. She would honor him. She would fulfill his last and most extraordinary wish. With renewed purpose, Ilara carefully placed the diary and map back on the pedestal, covering them with a piece of the worn tapestry to protect them. The immediate need was light and a place to truly study these precious documents. She couldn't unravel centuries of history in the dark. Her gaze swept the small room, searching for something Alaric might have left. In a corner, hidden beneath a loose stone, her fingers found a small leather pouch. Inside, to her surprise, were several flints, a small candle, and a tiny vial of oil. Alaric, ever thoughtful, had anticipated her needs. A flicker of light soon danced in the secret chamber, casting long, undulating shadows. The warm glow of the candle illuminated the ancient symbols on the map, the elegant script of the diary. Ilara felt a wave of connection, as if Alaric himself were there, guiding her hand. She was old, yes, and vulnerable, but she was not alone. She had his words, his map, and his unwavering trust. The castle, once a symbol of her abandonment, now pulsed with the promise of a glorious past and a challenging future. The journey to restore Valyria would be long, full of unknowns, but Ilara, the unexpected guardian, was ready. Her heart, once broken, now beat with the rhythm of a kingdom waiting to be reborn. Ilara, seated in the rustic chair, brought the candle closer to the diary, its flame flickering and dancing over the yellowed pages. The gloom of the secret chamber receded a little further, revealing the faded ink and Alaric's elegant handwriting. Her eyes, once clouded with tears of grief, now burned with intense concentration, absorbing every stroke of her beloved's writing. She knew that every word there was a fragment of her husband, a piece of the enigma he had left for her to solve, a final conversation between them. The first page, with the dedication, "To my beloved Ilara," the guardian of what once was and what still can be, seemed to vibrate beneath her fingers, a direct invitation from beyond the grave, sealing the connection that death had tried to sever. With reverent care, she turned the page, feeling the fragility of the ancient paper beneath her wrinkled fingers. Alaric began the narrative by describing the lineage of Valyria, a kingdom that had flourished in a forgotten era before being swept away by cataclysms and betrayals. He spoke of wise kings and warrior queens, of a people who lived in harmony with nature and magic, and of an artifact, the heart of Valyria, which was the source of their prosperity and power. With each line, Ilara felt the weight of history, the grandeur of a past that she, in her simple and humble life, could never have imagined. Her Alaric, a direct descendant of all this. It was almost unbelievable, but the seriousness of the words and the emotion contained in the writing left no doubt in her heart. A wrinkle of worry formed on her brow, the shadow of insecurity trying to cast itself. How could she, an elderly woman with aching joints and no knowledge of kingdoms or magical artifacts, fulfill such a mission? Doubt, a familiar ghost that had haunted her since Alaric's departure, tried to creep into her heart. She was no fairy tale heroine, but a widow who could barely climb the castle stairs without her knees complaining. However, remembering Alaric's gaze, the unwavering trust he had placed in her, doubt receded, replaced by a spark of determination. He had chosen her. He knew her strength, her unbreakable loyalty, her capacity to love and to fight for what she believed in. Ilara continued to read, and Alaric not only narrated the history, but also detailed the first steps of the quest. He explained that the map was just the beginning, a guide to unraveling the seals of memory, a series of riddles and challenges scattered throughout the castle's ruins and the surrounding lands. The first seal, he precisely indicated, was hidden where the sunlight kisses the oldest stone at dawn. Ilara lifted her eyes from the diary, her gaze sweeping the small chamber, then the narrow window. imagining the sunrise. Where could this mysterious place be? She picked up the parchment again, unrolling the map under the flickering candlelight. The mysterious symbols, once completely indecipherable, began to make sense in the light of Alaric's words. There was a small circle marked in the upper left corner of the map, next to a stylized representation of a tower she recognized as the castle's East Tower. Beside it, a symbol that looked like a rising sun. Could it be there? The first starting point for her great adventure. A youthful enthusiasm, long forgotten beneath the weight of grief, ignited in her chest, warming her from within. The mission was daunting, yes, monumental, but not impossible. She was not alone. She had Alaric, his words, his guide, his faith. The loneliness that had consumed her since his departure was now filled with purpose, a connection that transcended death itself. She traced the rising sun symbol with her wrinkled finger, a plan beginning to form in her mind, clear as the candlelight. At dawn, she would search for that place. The journey of Elara, the guardian of Valyria, was just beginning, and she felt that for the first time in a long while, her heart beat with the vibrant promise of a future. Elara folded the parchment and closed the diary, carefully placing them back on the pedestal. The candle, almost at its end, cast dancing shadows that seemed to bring the stone walls to life. She felt the weariness of age weigh on her shoulders, but her mind was effervescent. Sleep seemed an impossibility, with so many thoughts and plans bubbling up. She decided she would spend the rest of the night there in that small sanctuary, protecting Alaric's secrets and preparing for dawn. As she settled into the rustic chair, covering herself with her cloak to ward off the cold that still stubbornly penetrated, a strange sound made her hold her breath. It wasn't the wind howling through the cracks or the creaking of old timbers. It was a soft, almost inaudible sound that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the wall of the secret chamber. A faint whimper, followed by a muffled sob. Elara's heart raced. It wasn't the castle's echo, nor Alaric's voice in her memory. It was a human sound, real and close. Her eyes, accustomed to the gloom, swept the small room. Where could it be coming from? With her walking stick in hand, she stood up, caution mixed with a sudden wave of concern. The sound repeated, clearer now, a child's cry. Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. Children, in the abandoned castle. Slowly, she approached the wall opposite the entrance, where the stone seemed smoother. The crying seemed to come from there, muffled, as if there were a secret passage. Her wrinkled fingers fumbled over the cold stone, searching for any irregularity. And then she felt it, an almost imperceptible crack, a hidden door, so well camouflaged it would go unnoticed. With an effort she pushed, and a section of the wall moved, revealing a dark opening. Inside, huddled and trembling with cold, were two little girls, one older, perhaps 7, and the other a little smaller, with wide, frightened eyes. Their clothes were old and torn, and their faces were smudged with soot and tears. Elara's gaze fixed on them. The mission of Valyria, the artifact, the forgotten kingdom, all of it receded to the back of her mind. In that moment, there was only the sight of those two small lives, vulnerable and lost, in the heart of the castle. A new and unexpected responsibility, more immediate and pressing than any ancestral legacy, had just presented itself. Elara knelt with difficulty, ignoring the sharp pain in her knees. Her eyes, once fixed on the mysteries of a kingdom, now softened with a long-dormant tenderness. The two little girls, huddled against each other, looked like two frightened birds, their small bodies trembling uncontrollably. The older one, with wide eyes, tried to shield the smaller one, who was softly sobbing against her shoulder. "Little ones," Elara whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion, extending a wrinkled hand with an open palm, a gesture of peace and welcome. You don't need to be afraid, my dears. I won't hurt you." The older girl, with a glimmer of courage, lifted her dirty face. Her brown eyes, despite the fear, held a spark of distrust and curiosity. "Who are you?" Her voice was an almost inaudible thread, but laden with a vital question. Ilara felt a pang in her heart. These children were alone, lost in a cold, forgotten castle, a scenario that mirrored her own vulnerability. Alaric's mission, the map, the diary, all became secondary to the urgency of that moment. Altruism, a value that had always guided her life, emerged with full force. "I am Ilara," she replied with a gentle smile, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. "I live here. Are you hungry? Cold?" The mention of hunger made the smaller girl's stomach rumble audibly, and a blush rose to her pale face. The older one hesitated for an instant, then nodded shyly. "Yes, Mum. We've been here a long time. Our parents disappeared." Ilara perceived the depth of their despair and abandonment. "Come, my dears. We can't stay here in the dark and cold." She rose with a groan, her walking stick serving as firm support, and extended her hand again. "Let's go to a warmer place, where I can light a fire and find something for you to eat." The girls exchanged glances, doubt still present in their eyes, but the promise of warmth and food was irresistible. Slowly, the older one extended her hand to the smaller, and together, with hesitant steps, they emerged from the secret passage, their small feet dragging on the floor. Ilara guided them out of the small chamber, back to the main hall, where the fireplace was unlit. The candlelight she carried barely illuminated the way, but the children's presence filled the space with a new energy, a fragility that demanded her protection. As she moved to light the fireplace, Ilara thought of Alaric. He had sent her to Valyria for a grand purpose, yes, but perhaps that purpose was more than just a kingdom. Perhaps it was about life, about the human connection she had lost, and which now presented itself so unexpectedly. The little girls huddled near the fireplace, watching Ilara with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, their wide eyes. Their eyes followed her every move, from striking the flint to the moment the first flames licked the dry wood, crackling and emitting warmth. The warmth began to spread, and their small bodies relaxed a little, the trembling subsiding. "What are your names, my sweets?" Ilara asked, sitting on the stone floor near them, feeling the warmth. The older one, with a thread of a voice, said, "I am Lyra, and this is my sister, Lena." Lyra, 7 years old, and Lena, perhaps 5. So young to be alone with such a burden. "Lyra and Lena," Ilara repeated, savoring the names, a smile blossoming on her lips. What beautiful names. She took out a piece of dry bread and some cheese she had saved for herself, offering it to them with a gesture. The girls' eyes lit up, and they eagerly took the food, devouring every crumb. The scene broke Ilara's heart and at the same time filled it with fierce determination. She could not abandon them. That castle, once a burden, now became a refuge, and she, the guardian of a legacy, was now also the guardian of 2 innocent lives. The restoration of Valyria would gain new meaning, a new urgency. It was not just for Alaric, but for Lyra and Lena, for a future where hunger and fear would have no place. Ilara felt a renewed strength, a purpose that transcended the personal, embracing family and altruism. She would protect them, nurture them, and together, perhaps, they would find the way to Valyria's lost glory and to a new beginning for all. Human connection, altruism, justice, and overcoming. These values intertwined with the grand mission, giving it a depth she had never imagined. Ilara watched Lyra and Lena devour the bread and cheese with a voracity that tugged at her heart. The small pieces of food vanished quickly, and the silence, once heavy with fear and abandonment, was now filled only by the soft sounds of chewing and the crackling of the fire. The girls' faces, once pale and dirty, began to gain a faint blush from the warmth, and their eyes, though still cautious, showed a glimmer of relief. Ilara felt an overwhelming wave of tenderness, a sense of purpose that transcended the grandeur of Alaric's mission. Protecting these two innocent lives seemed in that instant the most important of all legacies. When the last crumb was consumed, Lyra, the older one, wiped her mouth with her torn sleeve and looked at Ilara. "Thank you, Mom," she said, her voice now a little firmer. Lena, nestled beside her sister, merely nodded, her wide eyes fixed on the dancing flame. Ilara smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't felt in a long time. "You're welcome, my dears, but now you need to tell me what happened. How did you end up in this big, empty castle?" Lyra hesitated, her eyes darting to the stone floor. "Our parents, they left us. They told us to hide here and that they would come back. But they didn't. It's been many days." The girl's voice trembled, and Lena began to sob softly again, remembering the pain of separation. Ilara felt a cold anger rise up her spine, mixed with deep sadness. Abandoning small children in a place like Valyria was an act of unimaginable cruelty. The weight of injustice fell upon her. "They won't be coming back, my sweets," Ilara said softly, choosing her words carefully so as not to frighten them further, but also to be honest. "But you are no longer alone. I am here." She reached out and gently stroked Lyra's tangled hair. The girl didn't flinch, and a small gesture of trust was established between them. "This castle is cold and old, but we will make it a home. You will stay with me." The promise of a home, even in a ruined castle, brought a glimmer of hope to Lyra's eyes. "But you won't leave us too?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, insecurity still present. Ilara squeezed the girl's hand. "Never. I promise. Together, we will take care of each other." Human connection, so vital and healing, began to blossom there amidst the ashes of a glorious past and the uncertainty of a future. Ilara knew the night would be long. The castle had no soft beds or warm blankets for the girls. Her own meager supplies would barely be enough for 3. The immediate obstacle was not a map riddle, but the survival and comfort of Lyra and Lena. She would need to find more food, more blankets, perhaps even a safer, warmer place to sleep. Her thoughts returned to Alaric's diary, to the mission of Valyria. How could she reconcile the search for a legendary artifact with the responsibility of 2 children? But then a thought struck her. Alaric had chosen her for her loyalty, her strength, her heart. Perhaps the presence of Lyra and Lena was not a diversion, but an essential part of her purpose. The restoration of Valyria would not just be about a forgotten kingdom, but about the restoration of hope, security, and family. It was about building a worthy future for these children, a future where they would not be abandoned. Overcoming her own fears and limitations, and now protecting these lives, gave new meaning to her journey. Ilara, the guardian of the legacy, also became the guardian of a future. With a sigh, she stood up, her walking stick in hand, and began to think about where to find more firewood to keep the fire burning through the night. Ilara, with a sigh that blended the weariness of age and a new, vibrant determination, leaned on her walking stick and began to move. The fireplace in the main hall, though imposing, needed more fuel. The wood she had found earlier was scarce. Lyra and Lena, their small bodies huddled near the fire, watched her with curious and slightly less frightened eyes, the initial warmth already lulling them into a faint stupor. "Stay close to the fire, my dears," Ilara said, her voice soft but firm, as she headed for a side door she knew led to an old pantry. There perhaps there would be firewood, Each step was a sharp reminder of her advanced age, the pain in her joints, but the urgency to protect those innocent lives propelled her with a strength she hadn't felt in years. In the pantry, amidst dense cobwebs and the damp smell of mold, Ilara found a pile of dry logs, surprisingly intact. They were heavy, with rough bark beneath her wrinkled fingers, but she dragged them one by one, with concentrated effort, back to the hall. Lyra, noticing the elderly woman's effort, timidly rose from the cold floor. "Do you want help, Lady Ilara?" she asked, her childish voice still a little shaky, but imbued with a new willingness. A warm, genuine smile lit up Ilara's wrinkled face, dispelling some of her fatigue. "Yes, my sweet. If you can pick up the smaller twigs, it would help a lot to keep this fire burning." Lyra, with a new purpose guiding her small movements, began to gather the finer branches scattered across the floor, while Lena, still nestled near the fire, watched her sister with silent admiration. The fire crackled stronger, flames dancing and casting a golden welcoming glow upon the stone walls. Ilara, seated again, felt her body relax a little with the spreading warmth, but the girl's comfort was her utmost priority. "We need something for you to sleep on, something to protect you from the cold stone," she murmured, more to herself, as her eyes swept the hall in search of solutions. There were some old, torn rugs forgotten in a corner, but which, with a little imagination, could serve. Carefully, she dragged them near the fireplace, overlapping them to create a slightly softer surface, insulated from the icy floor. "It's not much, my dears, but it's a start for a warmer night," she said, smoothing one of the rugs with her hand, a gesture of affection. Lyra and Lena approached, touching the worn fabric with hesitant fingers. The simplicity of the gesture, the silent gratitude in their eyes, touched Ilara deeply, rekindling something within her. She took off her own cloak, which, though thin and well-worn, would offer some additional warmth. "Share this," she offered, spreading it over the rugs. The girls nestled under the cloak, one on each side, their small, fragile bodies finding comfort in proximity and shared warmth. Watching them, Ilara felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. The loneliness that had surrounded her since Alaric's death seemed less oppressive now, almost non-existent. Their presence, their soft, rhythmic breaths, the warmth of their small bodies brought a new and unexpected life to the castle, filling the voids of stone and memory. The mission of Valyria, the artifact, the forgotten kingdom, all were still there in her mind, but now intertwined with a more immediate, more palpable, more human purpose. Alaric had sent her to Valyria to find a grand legacy, yes, but perhaps the true legacy was the capacity to love and protect, to build a new future from the ruins of a glorious past. She thought of the seals of memory, the riddles she needed to decipher at dawn. How would she do that with 2 children in her care, depending on her for everything? Doubt tried to creep in again, a familiar shadow, but it was quickly pushed away by a growing conviction. She was not alone. Lyra and Lena, with their innocence and resilience, could be an unexpected strength, not a burden. Their young eyes might see details that hers, aged, might miss. Their childish curiosity might unravel secrets that adult logic sometimes overlooked. Ilara felt a deep and unbreakable connection with those girls, a responsibility that filled her in a way that grief had emptied her. Overcoming for her was not just about finding the artifact, but about overcoming her own pain, her own old age and limitations, to be a beacon of hope for them. Justice for Ilara now included giving Lyra and Lena a safe home and a future, something that had been cruelly denied to them. The night advanced, and the castle, once a place of ghostly echoes and sepulchral silence, now harbored the warmth of a fire and the soft sound of 3 souls breathing. Ilara, seated near the girls, watched over their sleep, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The journey of Valyria had transformed. It was no longer just the search for a lost kingdom, but the building of a new home, a new family. in the heart of a forgotten place. And for the first time in a long while, Ilara felt she was not just surviving, but living fully, with a purpose that warmed her soul more than any fire. She knew the challenges would be immense, but the sparkle in Lyra and Lena's eyes, the trust that was beginning to emerge, were the unwavering strength she needed to move forward. Dawn arrived, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold through the high castle window's cracks. Ilara, who had dozed off sitting, awoke with a slight chill, but the warmth of the fire still crackled, a comforting reminder of the night that had passed. Lyra and Lena slept soundly under the cloak, their small faces relaxed in the innocence of sleep, their bodies huddled together. Watching them filled Ilara's heart with a mix of tenderness and immense responsibility. That sparkle in their eyes, the trust that was beginning to emerge, was indeed the unwavering strength she needed. With a soft groan, Ilara stood up, her walking stick in hand. The pain in her knees seemed a little less acute, overshadowed by the urgency of her new tasks. The first was to ensure the girls had something to eat and some clean water. She knew her supplies were limited, but their need was pressing. The castle, though decrepit, had a well in the inner courtyard, and she would need to go there. "My dears," Ilara whispered, gently touching Lyra's shoulder. The girl blinked, her brown eyes slowly opening, a flicker of confusion before she recognized Ilara and the warmth of the fire. Lena, feeling the movement, also awoke, yawning and stretching like a kitten. "Good morning, Ilara," Lyra said, her voice sleepy, but already with a tone of familiarity. The simple mention of her name, spoken by a child, warmed Ilara more than the fire. "Good morning, my sweets. We need to find something for breakfast and some fresh water. Will you come with me?" Ilara asked, extending her hand to Lyra. The thought of leaving them alone, even for an instant, caused her a pang of anxiety. The girls stood up, their movement still a little slow, but curiosity already shone in their eyes. The promise of a new morning, even in an abandoned castle, brought a hint of adventure. Together, the three left the main hall, Ilara carefully guiding them through the dark corridors, the dawn light beginning to penetrate through the cracks and broken windows. The cold morning air enveloped them, but each other's presence was a different warmth, a human connection that dispelled loneliness. In the courtyard, the well seemed even older under the pale light. Ilara, with effort, managed to hoist the heavy bucket, the cold, crystalline water a welcome relief. The girls drank eagerly, their faces lighting up. Ilara offered them the remainder of her bread and cheese, promising she would look for more during the day. As the girls ate, Ilara looked at the east tower, which rose majestically against the morning sky. The sun was beginning to kiss the highest stones, exactly as Alaric had described. The first seal, the mission of Valyria. How to reconcile the search for a forgotten kingdom with the pressing need to care for two children. But then, the answer came clear. The restoration of Valyria would not just be about a kingdom, but about the hope and future she could offer Lyra and Lena. Ilara felt a wave of determination. "Little ones," Ilara said, pointing to the tower. "We need to go there. It's a very important part of this castle, and perhaps we'll find something that will help us find more food and blankets." And she reframed the mission into something that made sense to them, transforming the search for a legacy into a practical adventure. Lyra and Lena's eyes widened. "An adventure?" Lena asked, a shy smile appearing on her lips. "Yes, an adventure," Ilara confirmed, her own heart beating with renewed enthusiasm. "But we need to be very careful and always stay together." Hand in hand, the three began the walk towards the East Tower. Each of Ilara's steps was heavy, but the girls' energy, the curiosity on their faces, propelled her. They passed through crumbling arches and courtyards overgrown with vegetation, the castle's silence broken by the girls' murmurs and the sound of Ilara's walking stick, on the stone floor. The journey was slow, but each physical obstacle was overcome by the strength of the connection forming between them. As they reached the base of the East Tower, the sun was already higher, but still cast its first golden rays upon the oldest stones. Ilara looked up, searching for the stone Alaric had mentioned. There were so many stones, so many marks of time. She felt a slight discouragement, but then Lyra, pointing to a moss-covered stone at the base of the tower, exclaimed, "Look, Ilara, this stone is different. It looks like it has a drawing on it." Ilara leaned in, her aged eyes focusing where Lyra's finger pointed. And there it was, almost erased by time and moss, a small symbol carved into the oldest stone the sun kissed, a rising sun, identical to the one on Alaric's map. Ilara's heart leaped, a whirlwind of emotions flooding her. It was real. Alaric had not abandoned her to a solitary fate, but had guided her to this monumental purpose, to this moment of revelation. "It's it, my dears! It's the first seal of memory!" she exclaimed, her voice choked with emotion, her eyes brimming with tears of relief and gratitude. She touched the symbol with trembling fingers, feeling the roughness of the stone beneath the moss, centuries of history beneath her wrinkled skin. Lyra and Lena approached, their small hands also extended to touch the mysterious drawing, imitating Ilara's gesture. "What does it do, Ilara?" Lena asked, childish curiosity overcoming any lingering fear. Ilara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart that beat like a drum in her chest. "It's a clue, my sweet, a clue to our treasure, to our forgotten kingdom." She tried to push the stone, searching for some hidden lever or mechanism, but the rocky surface remained solid, unmoving, defiant. She ran her hand over the moss, trying to clear it in the hope that it would reveal something. But the symbol remained inert, unresponsive. A pang of frustration began to set in, a familiar shadow of doubt. Had she misinterpreted the map? Had Alaric left an unsolvable riddle, a cruel test? Lyra, with the shrewdness and perceptiveness of her 7 years, watched Ilara intently, her brown eyes fixed on the scene. "But the sun is kissing the stone, Ilara. You said the sun kissed the stone." Ilara looked at the girl, then at the sun, which indeed was now a little higher in the sky, casting an intense golden ray directly onto the center of the symbol. "Yes, my sweet, but what does that mean in practice?" Lyra shrugged, thoughtful, but Lena, who was playing with some loose pebbles on the ground, suddenly picked one up and pressed it against the center of the carved sun, imitating Ilara's gesture of touching the symbol. "Like this, like a kiss?" she asked, her voice soft and innocent, an echo of childish purity. In that instant, a faint tremor ran through the stone, a subtle vibration Ilara felt to her bones. A shiver ran up her spine, not of fear but of electrifying anticipation. The rising sun symbol, once pale and almost invisible, began to emit a soft glow, almost imperceptible at first, but which quickly intensified, pulsing with a golden warm light. The girls recoiled a step, their eyes wide with astonishment, their small mouths open in admiration. A low sound, a deep, ancient creak, like the groan of the earth itself, echoed from the depths of the tower, making the entire structure vibrate slightly. The stone with the symbol, which had previously seemed an integral part of the massive wall, began to slowly rotate inward, revealing a small, dark crevice. Ilara brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the opening that was forming, her heart beating erratically. The air coming from within was cold and damp, laden with the unmistakable scent of earth, stone, and centuries of oblivion. It was not a dungeon, but a narrow, almost secret passage that delved into the darkness. The golden glow of the sun on the symbol stabilized, keeping the passage illuminated enough to reveal the first steps of a spiral staircase, roughly carved into the rock. "A secret passage!" Lyra whispered, her voice full of awe and excitement. Lena, clutching her sister's hand, merely nodded. her eyes shining with the thrill of discovery, fear replaced by wonder. Elara felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude for Alaric, for his genius, and for those two small souls who, with their innocence and observation, had unraveled the first mystery. That was the climax of her quest, the moment Valyria Castle revealed one of its best-kept secrets, a portal to the past and the future. But the initial excitement gave way to a new and pressing concern. The passage was narrow, dark, and promised to be treacherous. How would she, with her advanced age and walking stick and the two girls, navigate that unknown path? The icy air emanating from the opening was a reminder of the dangers and challenges that might lurk. However, the purpose, Alaric's promise, the hope of a future for Valyria, and above all for Lyra and Lena, was stronger than any fear or hesitation. "Come, my brave ones," Elara said, her voice now firm, filled with a new and unwavering determination. She took Lyra's hand, who in turn held Lena's, forming a chain of support. "Together we will discover what Alaric left for us." The golden glow of the carved sun seemed to guide them, a beacon of hope in the impending darkness. The journey to the heart of Valyria, to the forgotten legacy, was just beginning. Elara felt that with Lyra and Lena by her side, there was no obstacle they couldn't overcome. The next step, she knew, would be even more challenging, but the human connection that bound them was the true unbreakable strength. Elara, firmly holding Lyra's hand, who in turn clutched Lena's, took the first hesitant step into the secret passage. The cold, damp air enveloped them, laden with the scent of ancient earth and wet stone. The darkness was almost total. Only a thread of golden light from the symbol at the entrance followed them, casting dancing shadows on the uneven walls. "Slowly, my dears," Elara whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. Each stone step, worn by time and slippery, was a challenge for her aged knees. Her walking stick felt its way ahead, seeking support. Lyra, with a surprising protective instinct for her age, adjusted her pace to match Elara's, her eyes attentive to the elderly woman's every movement. Lena, though a little frightened, kept her curiosity alight, her wide eyes trying to discern shapes in the gloom. "It's very dark, Elara," Lena murmured, clutching her sister tighter. "Don't worry, my sweet. We are together, and Alaric's light will guide us," Elara replied, feeling a pang of hope as she mentioned her husband. The descent seemed endless, the spiral staircase delving deeper and deeper into the heart of the tower. Elara felt weariness in every muscle, but Alaric's determination, the promise of a future for the girls, propelled her. Suddenly the passage opened into a small circular chamber, more spacious than the staircase but equally dark. The beam of light from the entrance barely reached there. "Wait here," Elara requested, letting go of Lyra's hand and fumbling along the walls in search of something, anything. Her fingers brushed against a protrusion on the wall and, with a soft click, an embedded torch lit up, revealing the surroundings. The chamber was simple, yet untouched by time. In the center there was a stone table, and upon it a small, dark wooden chest adorned with delicate carvings. Beside the chest, a rolled parchment and a small glass vial containing a shimmering liquid. Elara approached, her heart pounding. Lyra and Lena, marveling, followed her, their eyes fixed on the mysterious objects. Elara carefully opened the chest. Inside, there was a smaller diary, different from the one she already possessed, and a letter written in Alaric's unmistakable handwriting. Elara's hands trembled as she picked up the letter. Her aged eyes scanned the words, and warm tears began to stream down her face. "My beloved Elara," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means you have found the first seal and that your courage and loyalty, which I have always admired, have brought you here. This is not a place of abandonment, but of new beginnings. The artifact of Valyria is not just a treasure, but the key to restoring hope and justice, not only for a kingdom, but for lost souls that destiny will place in your path. The girls, Lyra and Lena, are the true heritage Valyria needs. The diary you hold contains the last secrets, the final map, and the instructions to activate the artifact. The vial, it is the essence of Valyria's light to illuminate your path. I knew you would be capable. You are the guardian Valyria has always needed and the mother these children deserve. My love for you is eternal, and my purpose in Valyria now is yours. Elara clutched the letter to her chest, tears mingled with a smile of pure happiness and relief. Alaric had never abandoned her. He had guided her to a greater purpose, to a family. The pain of her broken heart began to heal. She looked at Lyra and Lena, who watched her with expressions of curiosity and a hint of anxiety. He left us a path, my dears. A path to a future for all of us, Elara said, her voice choked with emotion, but filled with a new and unwavering certainty. She opened the smaller diary. Its pages contained detailed drawings and clear writing, pointing to the next seal. Located in the castle's underground crypts, the final map was a complex diagram, but the vial of light, when Elara touched it, emitted a soft glow, almost like a guide. The resolution was palpable. The uncertainty of why and how dissipated, replaced by a clear purpose and renewed love. Elara felt Alaric's strength in every word, the wisdom of his plan. The mission of Valyria was not a burden, but a gift, and with Lyra and Lena by her side, holding their small hands, she knew she was not alone. Family, altruism, justice, and overcoming intertwined into a glorious destiny. Valyria Castle, once a place of echoes and solitude, now pulsed with the promise of a new beginning, illuminated by the essence of eternal love and the hope of a restored kingdom. The soft glow of Valyria's vial of light was the only guide as Elara, Lyra, and Lena descended once more, now into the underground crypts. The path was steeper and the air heavier, but Elara's determination was unwavering. The girls, confident in their new guardian, held her hands firmly, their curious eyes absorbing every shadow and every whisper of the wind. Finally, the light from the vial revealed a larger chamber carved into the living rock, where upon a simple pedestal lay the artifact of Valyria. It was not a shimmering jewel or a legendary sword, but an opaque crystal sphere, pulsing with a faint, almost imperceptible inner light. Elara approached, her heart pounding, Alaric's instructions echoing in her mind. With trembling hands, she opened the vial of Valyria's essence and poured its contents over the sphere. The instant the shimmering liquid touched the crystal, a wave of warmth and light expanded, not explosively, but like a soft, welcoming embrace. The crystal sphere began to glow with a pure golden intensity, radiating an energy that filled the chamber, dispelling darkness and cold. Elara felt a profound peace invade her soul, a sense of belonging she had not experienced in a long time. The cracks in the crypt walls seemed to soften, and the air, once stagnant, became fresh and vibrant. Lyra and Lena, with wide eyes, watched in wonder. The golden light enveloped them, and a smile of pure joy blossomed on their faces. Elara knelt, embracing the girls tightly, tears streaming freely. "We did it, my dears, we did it," she whispered, her voice choked. The artifact of Valyria had not restored a physical kingdom in the blink of an eye, but it had rekindled the flame of hope and life in the heart of the castle and, more importantly, in their hearts. The relentless cold of the castle was replaced by a comforting warmth, the ghostly echoes by a sense of home. Elara understood Alaric's true will. Valyria's legacy was not just a crown or a throne, but the capacity to love, to care, and to build a future for those who needed it most. The castle, once a burden, was now her sanctuary, her home, and the cradle of a new family. With the artifact activated, Valeria's energy flowed, promising not only the restoration of a forgotten kingdom, but the healing of souls and the building of a future where justice, altruism, and human connection would be the pillars. Ilara, the broken-hearted widow, had transformed into the guardian of a legacy, the mother of two girls, and the matriarch of a new beginning. Her final days would not be consumed by old age, but illuminated by a monumental purpose, a love that transcended death, and the promise of a full life in the heart of Valeria. Together, under the artifact's golden light, they were the very restoration of the kingdom. The golden light of the artifact of Valeria was not just a spectacle for the eyes. It was a presence that rooted itself in the very fabric of the castle, transforming what was once a place of melancholy into a refuge of warmth and life. Ilara felt this energy pulsing in her veins, a renewed vigor that dispelled the fatigue of her years. She watched Lyra and Lena, whose faces, once marked by apprehension, now radiated a contagious joy. The girls laughed, running through corridors that once whispered tales of abandonment, now illuminated by a soft, constant glow emanating from the artifact chamber. Days at Valeria Castle took on a new rhythm. Ilara, with the girls' help, began to organize the chambers, no longer battling the cold, but enjoying a mild and constant temperature. The torn tapestries were mended with colorful threads Ilara found in a forgotten chest, and the windows, once dusty, were cleaned, allowing sunlight to blend harmoniously with the artifact's golden glow. Lyra, with her practical nature, helped sweep away dust and arrange the ancient books Alaric had left, while Lena, with her vivid imagination, transformed every corner of the castle into a stage for her games, inventing stories of princesses and brave knights. Ilara dedicated her mornings to studying Alaric's diary, deciphering the last secrets and plans for Valeria's restoration. It was not just about a physical kingdom, she now understood, but about the restoration of hope and community. Alaric had detailed not only the location of other minor artifacts, but also the importance of cultivating the land around the castle and opening its doors to those seeking refuge and a new beginning. The idea, once daunting, of welcoming strangers into her sanctuary now seemed the most natural of missions. In the afternoons, Ilara taught Lyra and Lena about the history of Valeria, about Alaric's lineage, and the importance of his legacy. The girls listened with a seriousness that belied their age, understanding that they were part of something grand. Ilara saw in them not just the heirs of a kingdom, but the future guardians of values like altruism and justice. The connection between the three deepened each day, weaving an improbable but unbreakable family, united by a common purpose and the love Alaric had sown. The obstacle of loneliness, which once oppressed her, had dissolved like mist in the sun. Ilara was no longer alone. She had Lyra and Lena and Alaric's constant, comforting presence through his legacy. Overcoming her own pain and accepting her new mission had transformed her into a strong and resilient woman. Her gestures were firmer, her gaze more serene, and her smile, once rare, now blossomed frequently, illuminating her wrinkled face. The castle, which once seemed a tomb for a glorious past, was now a beacon of hope. The artifact's energy subtly began to extend beyond the walls, causing the surrounding plants to flourish with unusual vigor, and the water of an ancient, long-dry well to flow crystal clear again. Ilara knew this was just the beginning. The restoration of Valeria would not be an instantaneous event, but a continuous journey, a daily building of love, care, and community. She felt that Alaric, somehow, was watching, proud of the woman she had become and the family she was building. The future, once a blank and frightening canvas, now unfolded vibrant and full of promises, a testament to the power of human connection and the resilience of the human spirit.